Okay, grade 12s. So we are going to go through DNA replication. So this is going to be kind of two parts. This is going to actually be many parts. Today is going to be part 1, and then I also have part 2 tomorrow, and the next week is going to be part 3 and 4. So kind of a big process. It's a very important process to go over, though. We'll kind of discuss that coming up, because really all we have left in genetics is replication and then creating protein synthesis. So we are going to kind of simplify things as well. But let's go through kind of the part 1, the basics today. So if we kind of look at this diagram that I kind of have here on the first picture, we see mitosis, and we did this in grade 11, and what we said was, oh, look at these little blue lines and green lines, those are chromosomes, and they're replicating each other, and then we get 2 new cells. And we kind of talked about it at that level. Okay, well, we're going to be talking about the exact same thing now. Now we're just going to be talking at a very, very small level. Like, if we look, here was the original chromosomes, okay? And then they replicated themselves. So I went from 1 double helix to 2 double helix of blue, and 1 double helix of green to now 2 double helixes of green, okay? And they did this, and they replicated their DNA, and then the cells split, and then you have 2 new cells, each with the proper amount of DNA. So we're going to be kind of talking about this process, but now at a microscopic level, at the level of the bases, okay, as opposed to just kind of drawing lines and saying they replicated. So that's what this next couple weeks is going to be about, is DNA replication. Okay, so the first, we should know about the reasons for replication. So why do we even replicate our DNA? Okay, well, there's really only 3 main reasons for replication. Okay, and we went through these in grade 11 called cell division. So the 3 reasons: 1, multicelled organisms need to grow. Okay, and we call this mitosis when we do it. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth coming up. They need to be able to grow. Okay, multicelled organisms also need to be able to repair ourselves. So we get damaged sometimes. We get a cut. We lose a hair. We hit our arm. Okay, we have to repair ourselves. So we have to make new cells in order to do that, or replicate ourselves. And then the last one, single and multicelled organisms, we make new cells to reproduce. Okay, so if we look over the pictures here, males are producing sperm, so they're making new sperm. Okay, so they're constantly regenerating, making new sperm, making new cells. Okay, and that cell has part of their genetic information. Okay, now females are a little bit different. They made all of their eggs prior to birth, so they're not presently making more eggs. They already have all of them inside of them at birth, and they're going to be releasing it each month. Okay. All right, so let's go through the 3 reasons a little bit more in depth. The first one, multicelled organisms need to grow. Okay, so we, like many other animals and plants, we are multicellular. We're made up of a little over 1 trillion cells. Well, we all started out as 1 cell. Okay, you started out as the combination of your dad's sperm and your mom's egg combined, and that was the original cell. It was 1 cell, then it became 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and kept doubling and doubling and doubling and doubling. Okay, and as we did that, that's how we grew. Okay, so you grew into the body that you have now. Okay, now we've also gone through several other growth spurts, specifically the one that you're probably just finishing right now, which was puberty, where you had some accelerated growth. Well, how you were growing, how you were getting bigger, how you were getting taller, how you were getting stronger, was you were making more cells. So you were replicating those cells, and every time you replicated a cell, you need to copy all of the DNA into that new cell. Okay. Second one is we need to repair ourselves. So being multicellular, we don't die when one of our cells die. Even if 100 of our cells dies, we don't die. Okay? Unlike single-celled organisms, like a bacteria. If you kill a bacteria cell, it's dead, okay, because it was only 1 cell. But us, you can kill 100 cells, 1,000 cells of ours, and we're not dead. Okay? But we're damaged. We do become damaged when you destroy ourselves. But what we can do is we can take neighboring cells and replicate them to repair us. So we do need to replace those cells that got damaged or were killed. And we do that by replicating nearby cells again and again. So say if I get like a cut in my arm, I've got over here in the picture. So if I cut my arm, what's going to happen here now is I'm going to have skin cells. Let me use blue here. Skin cells right here and skin cells right here start replicating, and here and here. And they're going to start replicating and replicating and replicating until they come all the way across. And they're going to heal me. Okay, and that takes a little bit of time. That's what we know as a scab, and then eventually it heals. And all that really is a bunch of cells replicating and replicating and covering that. And every single time you made a new cell, you need to copy your entire DNA. Okay? So some examples of it would be like you need to make new skin cells, you need to make new hair cells when your hair falls out or you cut your hair. Tongue cells, organ cells, neuron cells are limited, okay? So that's kind of something interesting. You know, we always talk about, especially at your age, to be avoiding alcohol and drugs. And the reason for it is if you destroy your neurons, in particular at your age, you can't regenerate them. They can't reform. Okay? And it becomes worse and worse as you get older. So if you destroy a bunch of neurons at, say, 18, you're going to have limited brain capability for the rest of your life. If you destroy those neurons at 90, okay, then that's not that big of a deal. I mean, you're not going to be doing multiple really complicated tasks at age 90. But if you destroy them at 18, you're going to have a lifetime of limited brain capability. Okay, so you really want to avoid drugs and alcohol, especially when you're young. Okay, here's just a better, kind of a bigger picture of kind of an example of you getting damaged. Okay, so you don't need to really know this diagram too much. I'm just kind of showing you. Say you have a damage, so you get cut. So there's your cut. So now you've destroyed all those cells. All those cells in that cut are gone. What's going to happen is skin cells right beside there are going to start replicating and replicating and replicating. And that's what you're seeing here. So this is like a scab. And then eventually it's going to turn back into skin. Okay, and all that happened was through mitosis or cell division, replication. Okay, and the last one is to reproduce. So multi-celled organisms like us use this process called meiosis, which we learned about in grade 11, to create half their DNA into eggs and sperm. So we create these eggs and sperm, and that's kind of what we have pictured up here. So we're making these. We made these cells. Okay, we made those cells. We need to put half of our DNA. Not all of our DNA, but only half of it. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. If you were a bacteria, though, you don't do that. You just clone yourself. So here's a bacteria kind of down here. And the way that they basically is they replicate their DNA, okay? And then they just kind of split, and then they're two clones of each other. So they're identical twins. I mean, they're exactly the same, okay? We're not like that. We're a combination of our mom and dad. Okay. Now, this is just a little side note because we're talking about the coronavirus. What's happening with the coronavirus right now? So what a virus is, if you remember, this is just protein and DNA. It's just two things, protein and DNA. So what the coronavirus is doing is it's entering into our lungs, okay? And as it goes into our lungs, it goes into our lung cells. So this is kind of a picture right here of a lung cell, okay? And as it goes into our lung cells, how a virus works is very interesting because it's not actually a cell. It's not a living thing. What it will do is it will attach to the cell, inject its DNA, okay? So it's going to inject its instructions. And once it injects its instructions into our lung cells, it basically destroys our DNA. So now we don't have any instructions on what the cell should be doing because the virus destroyed it. And then it basically plants a new set of instructions and says, instead of doing lung functions, I want you to start making these things, which is basically more coronaviruses. Right? So then our lung cells actually start making viruses. And they start producing a whole bunch of viruses. These explode, they go onto another cell, and now they're all inside of our lungs. And if we cough and expel that, or even just breathing, can then breathe that out, and then somebody else can be infected. Okay, just kind of an FYI because of what's going on now. All right, let's get back to this. So let's now try and group everything together. Okay, because we have talked about in grade 11, we talked about chromosomes. Now we're talking about DNA, there's genes, there's alleles. How are we putting this all together? Well, I'm going to try and kind of explain all these different terms. Okay, so if we look at a cell, any cell in your body, your skin cell, your brain cell, your cheek cell, every cell in your body except for your red blood cells, okay, but every other cell. Inside those cells, you're going to have a nucleus. Okay, and inside your nucleus is DNA, okay, are the instructions for how your body is going to be run. Okay, but this DNA or double helix is very, very long. It's a very, very long set of instructions. This is really, really, really long molecule. So in order to be able to fit it into the nucleus, we wrap them. We wrap all the DNA around a piece of protein, and that's what chromosomes are. All chromosomes are basically the long DNA double helix that's been wrapped up around protein. So it's all compacted, and then it can fit inside a nucleus. Okay, so that's what chromosomes are. Right? It's chromosomes is really just DNA wrapped around protein, so it's all packaged up nicely. Okay, we have to unpackage it when we replicate, so that's why you have to undo the chromosomes. You have to kind of unwind them when you want to replicate, and then when you don't want to replicate, you package them back up. Chromosomes is packaged DNA. It's really kind of how you can think about it. Okay? All right, so that's DNA, and that's what chromosomes are. Now let's move it further. Now, you remember this picture. Oh, this was a karyotype. Okay, so if we remember from grade 11, okay, we looked at the karyotype, and they said, okay, we have 23 chromosomes, okay, and one's from our mom and one's from our dad. So we'll just say these are all the ones that are from our dad, and I'm going to go through all the ones that are from my dad. And then the other ones would be all the ones from my mom. Okay, if you remember, that would be all the ones from your mom. Okay, and I'll explain why I'm coloring all these in right now. Okay. So the question is, well, if this is DNA, then what the heck's this double helix over here? Okay, because I thought double helix was the DNA. Well, this is how it's a little bit confusing. Okay, so I'll try and clarify this. Okay, inside your cell, you actually have two double helixes. You have one double helix that came from your dad, okay? And what that double helix is basically all of these chromosomes all connected. So here's chromosome 2 from your dad, and it's actually connected to 3. And then 3 is connected to 4, to 5. Sorry, then we had to go back to 6, 7, 8, 9. So what I'm showing you in green is basically one double helix, the double helix that you got from your dad. Okay, and the chromosomes are all just broken little pieces. They've taken that double helix and broken them into a whole bunch of pieces. Okay, so you have two double helixes inside of you. You have the one that you got from your dad, and then you'd also have the one that you got from your mom. So these would all be connected pieces. Okay, so this would be another double helix, and it would be all the chromosomes all connected together. Okay, so that's why it's a little confusing. Okay, when we look at this karyotype sheet, all that karyotype sheet is the double helix all broken up into small little pieces. Okay, so you really have two double helixes inside of you. You have one from your mom and one from your dad. Okay, so that's where you kind of look at chromosomes in this picture, and then trying to explain, okay, how does this relate to the double helix? Okay. All right, now I'm going to explain something else. Let me just erase this for a second. Okay, going back to this. So if we look at, say, just one chromosome right now, okay, so we're going to look at just chromosome 4. Okay? So if we look at this, we know that one of them, let me pick a better color here. So we'll say this one's from my dad. It's chromosome 4, and this is from my mom. Okay. Now, there's some instructions on this chromosome. Okay. Now, the same instructions are on the chromosome from your dad, the chromosome from your mom. Okay. So they're going to say on chromosome 4, there's instructions for your hair color and your eye color. Okay. You're going to get that set of instructions from your dad, what color hair your dad gave you, and what instructions your dad gave you for eye color. Well, you're also going to get that from your mom. So on this chromosome, there's certain parts on the chromosome, not the entire chromosome, but little certain areas that code for things. Okay? And those are what these little black bands are. They're basically little regions that the instructions are in. They're called genes. Okay, so what a gene is basically a specific instruction. It's an instruction for hair color. It's an instruction for eye color. It's instruction for height. It's instruction for intelligence. It's basically a mini segment of the DNA that codes for a specific instruction. Okay? So those are what genes are. They're basically just little sets of instructions for different things. Okay? Now, what alleles are, and we got that from grade 11, is you get a certain set of instructions. So say we look at just this gene right here. We'll say this is the gene or instructions for eye color. Whether you're going to be dark eyes if you have blue eyes or black eyes. Okay? Now, you get an instruction from your dad, and say you got the instruction for black eyes. Okay, we're going to use that as a capital A because we'll say that was the dominant set of instructions if you remember. Now you also got a set of instructions from your mom. Now it could be the same set of instructions as your dad. Maybe it's the exact same set of instructions. Then you'd be considered AA. But maybe it was a different set of instructions. And that's when we use things like A, little a. Okay? And those are what alleles are. Alleles are basically versions of the genes or the different possibility of the instructions that that gene provides. Okay. Now, I know this is confusing, so I'm going to try and wrap it all up. Genetic code. Okay? And when you want to look at your genetic code, this is not your genetic code. Okay? Everybody's looks like this. So it doesn't really tell you anything. Okay? This is what this is the female, every single female would look like this. That's normal. That doesn't have Down syndrome or some kind of other genetic disorder. So this is not your genetic code. When you say you're getting your genetic code, when we come up here for a second. Okay? Because now let's get back and say, well, we've been just studying all these different letters. Okay? When you want to actually know is what you're getting. You're getting a series of letters that you are. So if you do 23andMe or if you do one of those online things or Ancestry, what they're going to do is they're actually going to read your base sequences. This is what your genetic code is. It's the series of letters that you are. Okay? Now, for the most part, all humans have the same series of letters. We're all exactly the same, okay, as we go through. Okay? However, very rarely, we do have, say, one base that's different. Okay? And some of us maybe have two that are different. And some of us may have 4 or 5 that are different. Okay? So for an example, say this is the gene for hair color. So all these letters basically code for the hair color that you're going to be. Okay? Well, all of us started out, right, in the northern part of Africa or the Mediterranean, okay, and we all started as having black hair. So we'll say this was the code for black hair, okay, because we all originally, our ancestors all had black hair. Okay. Then over time, what would happen is randomly you would get a mutation. It would change, say, 1 or 2 letters. It would change those 2 C's to 2 different letters. And that created, say, brown hair. Then you get another mutation. And now we have blonde hair. And then we might get another mutation. And now we have red hair. Okay? Now, some of these mutations will be completely destroy it. And then we say you get one more mutation. Oh no, all of a sudden now you have white hair. You can't create any color. Okay? So these mutations happen over time, and that's what creates our different sets of instructions. Now, let's try and put everything together here. Okay? So when we look at our karyotypes, we take a look at 3 different people, okay? 3 different females. They all would have the exact same karyotype. Now, we could look at this and see, are they going to have some major genetic difficulties? Are they going to look genetically different? Are they going to have some major problems with their development? And that's really the only thing that this karyotype can tell us from grade 11, is do they have some major problems? Do they have the proper number of chromosomes? And in this case, they all have the proper number of chromosomes. Okay? Now, remember, on each of them, they got a chromosome from their mom, and they also got a chromosome set from their dad. Okay? So in each of their bodies, they actually, in all of their cells, they have 2 chromosomes. So they have 2 double helixes, one from mom and one from dad. Okay? Now, let me just redo these colors to make a little bit more sense. Okay? So you got 2 double helixes, one from mom and one from dad. Okay? Now, you get a version of instructions. So from your mom, you got a version of instructions for, say, your hair color. Okay? So let's say from your mom, which we're going to use as red, you got a version for black hair, capital B. Okay? And then from your dad, you got a version of a little b. Okay? Now, what we're saying is that the instructions, okay, what these instructions are they are in the form of all these different series of letters. Okay? That's what gives the instructions to have black hair or to have blonde hair. Okay? So the fact that if we look across these three individuals that we would have. Okay, I have someone that has red hair, someone that has brown hair, someone that has blonde hair. Okay, they're going to largely have almost the exact same coding because it's all going to code for hair. So most of the letters is going to be exactly the same. If you look through it, most of the letters would be exactly the same. Okay. However, there's going to be a few random letters that would be slightly different. So say I'm just using an examples here, right? Where, these aren't actually going to be differences, but a couple different letter sequences would cause them to have slightly different hair colors. Okay? And that's the idea of between chromosomes, genes, alleles, and letters. Okay? I hope I clarify things. It's a very complex topic, and I'm trying to simplify things, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it. But that's really kind of how we tie in grade 11 and 12 together. Okay? So our next topic is going to be the initiation of replication.